Facebook Live. I'm Lisa Chin. I'm the CEO of Treehouse. And as a reminder, I wanted to let you know that if you have questions for today's guest, please put them in the comments section and we'll do our best to get to them. So joining me today is Gary Locke, a former two-term governor of the state of Washington, former Commerce Secretary under President Obama, and former ambassador to China, current champion for children and youth everywhere. Governor Locke, thank you for joining us. And can you say a few things about yourself and what you're up to these days?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Lisa, for the invitation to be part of this Facebook Live event and to be part of and hosted by Treehouse. Not much to say about me. I mean, I was born and raised actually not very far from your office building, your headquarters in Rainier Valley, just on the other side of Rainier Valley. Born and raised in Seattle. Actually lived in the Yesler Terrace housing project for just a few years. At that time, it was really for returning veterans from World War II and I think some University of Washington or medical students. My dad actually came to the United States when he was a teenager, joined the United States Army before the outbreak of World War II, was part of the Normandy invasion. And then after the war, went to Hong Kong, met my mom, and they got married, and he brought her back to Seattle. And so we lived in Yesler Terrace for just a few years, and then we moved to Beacon Hill, just across the valley from Treehouse, and then I've always lived in Rainier Valley until recently. So it's a great area, and just love the diversity of Rainier Valley, and this is home. I always, oftentimes, and a lot of us from the state of Washington, when we went to DC, or people knew we were connected with DC in one fashion or another, we'd always say, we're from Washington State, the real Washington, the better Washington. But it's been a great career serving the people of the state of Washington. And we still have a lot of issues that we need to confront with, especially now with the coronavirus. We're seeing so many people out of work. Human services and agencies and nonprofits are really stretched to the limit, really having a tough time. Food banks and things like that, and so it's now more than important, more than ever, critically important that community are involved in taking care of each other, supporting people in need, of course, trying to stop the virus and making sure that nobody dies. So Treehouse, I think, really has a big role in this time, supporting foster kids and making sure that they're able to, get fed, have good housing, and have good support systems, and ultimately getting the education that they need to really try to succeed in life. So I'm really proud to be and honored to be part of this Facebook Live event. Now you, of course, I think just started or recently started at Treehouse. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about what's happening at Treehouse. You have a nice building, a new building, I guess a few years old in Rainier Valley. And tell us a little bit more about what's happening at Treehouse.
Well, thank you, Gary. May is National Foster Care Month, so it's much more than ever, it's top of mind for us. What Treehouse does, as you know, is support youth from the ages of birth to 26 in youth experiencing foster care. We provide support for them to graduate from high school at the same rate as their non-foster care experiencing peers, and we also support them in finding careers and through post-secondary education. So we really do go from birth to 26 with everything from supplementing for camps and direct needs, clothing, food, all of those, as well as educational support. And as you mentioned, in these times when we are all still and under the stay home, stay healthy order, we're learning a lot about how to reach out and support our youth. And I have to say, I couldn't be more proud of this team, of the people the 150 employees we have at Treehouse, because they have done some extraordinary things to find our youth and to pivot and identify what are their needs now. So as you know, schools are closed and our youth are still expected to finish their coursework, and that requires access. So it's everything from finding technology, finding computers, gas cards, you name it. So thank you for asking about our young people, Governor. I know that the foster youth have a special place in your heart, and that when you were governor of our state, you were well known for your support of education and your support of especially those most disadvantaged young people. I believe around 2001, you established the Washington State Governor's Scholarship for Foster Youth. And I'm so grateful for that because many of our youth have been the recipients of this scholarship, many in this current cohort as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that scholarship and how it was started, what the goal is, and why you thought it was so important?
Well, in a roundabout way, we heard after I became governor that many other governors hold events, weekend retreats and things like that. Maybe they go off to a resort where they have horseback riding and play tennis and golf and fishing and things like that. And they get a lot of these basically corporate executives and members of the community who participate because they want some face time with the governor, and they donate, and then the proceeds, the net proceeds, go to some charitable event or cause chosen by the governor. But the problem with those weekend retreats is that the costs are so expensive. By the time you pay for all of those expenses, there's really not much left for the charity. And so we decided, oh, let's have a golf tournament. Now, at that time, I thought golf was the dumbest, most silly, crazy, most, ridiculous thing around. But, people seem to like golf. So, okay, all right, we'll do that. And we decided, okay, what would be the charitable event? It turns out that a friend of the family was a foster mom, and she worked in the prosecutor's office as a victim's advocate, but she was actually a foster mom for cracked babies.
Oh, wow.
And we would see just the emotional bond that was created between her and the baby that she was taking care of, and then just the trauma and the emotional difficulty of letting go, either for adoption, placement in foster care, or reunification with the mother, natural mother. And so we just saw the dedication of this foster parent. And that's why we decided, okay, and we learned more that foster youth in the state of Washington have a tough time. And so we decided, okay, we'll have the proceeds of this golf tournament go to giving out 4-year college scholarships to foster kids in the state of Washington. And they could go use it for a public, private college. They could start off at a 2-year college and then transfer. And we would always save the funds, earmark it for them, and it'd be set aside for them. And so over the course of almost 20 years now of this golf tournament, my golf has not gotten any better, by the way, but nonetheless, I am addicted to it. We have given out over 500 4-year college scholarships, and roughly about 40% of the recipients have actually graduated with a degree. When you look at the nationwide statistics, less than about 2% of foster kids ever attend college, because what happens in most states, when a foster youth turns 18, they're emancipated from the state. They get no more support through foster parents, and they're basically on their own. And so if they try to go to college, they're having to work part-time and carry a load part-time, and after a while they just can't do it and they drop out. So that's why we're really providing this. And I have to say, Treehouse has really been helpful in publicizing the availability of this scholarship, as well as helping in the selection of the recipients. And it's a great partnership. And we have so many other nonprofit agencies, whether it's the Casey Family Foundation, to corporations that have been supporting this. I know that other corporations are very active in foster care, like Deloitte accounting firm. At least the Seattle area one is very, very involved in foster care. And the state of Washington, to its credit, and legislators have really done a nice job of extending foster care support until kids basically are able to graduate, not just from high school, but actually go to college. And they provided funds for as well for some scholarships. And so it's an incredible group effort, community effort, but so much more needs to be done. So much more needs to be done.
Governor Locke, you mentioned government's role in supporting our foster youth. Can you say a little bit more about what you think government's role is in supporting our youth in particular with funding, with legislature, in the legislature? Can you say more about government's role in both funding and support of education for the most vulnerable youth, what it was like and where you think it needs to go now?
Well, first of all, it's very important to really try to recruit foster parents and to make sure that they're really committed, dedicated, and the vast majority are, and we're very, very lucky to have that. but sometimes there's not a fit between the young person and the family. And so we need to have that constant availability of high quality, dedicated, caring foster parents. And then we need to make sure that there's a social support system, that there's sufficient funding for those foster parents, not only to pay for the food and the clothing and everything else that a child needs. And then making sure that they have good support systems in the schools, and who can really advise them, because the reality is that most foster kids do move from home to home, not, more than we would ever like. And there needs to be continuity in the education program and counseling. And sometimes it's trying to stay in the same school. The high school is so critically important. Trying to keep families and siblings together as much as possible, or at least certainly within contact with each other. And that's why the social workers are so important, and organizations like Treehouse and the many other nonprofits play such a critical role in providing that support. And then letting the youth know that there are scholarships and financial aid available to attend college, whether it's the state program, whether it's the university or the college itself, the governor's scholarship fund, and so forth. And then right now, especially with this COVID-19, when you have a lot of the campuses closed down, well, a lot of these kids are I call them kids, and they're really not kids anymore, they're young adults, but they were living in the dormitories. Well, they relied on the food in the cafeterias at the university and the colleges. Well, those are shut down. So how are they supposed to, where are they supposed to live? Where are they supposed to get the money for the food that used to be provided as part of the tuition? And so we need to realize that there are a lot of foster youth out there that are kind of left in a lurch or on a limb on their own right now during this coronavirus, and what's going to happen to them and how can we support them. So I know that there's a lot of fundraising going on to really support these students, in addition to some of the federal funds that are available for all students during this particularly tough time.
Well, Governor, you've done a lot of work on education, as we talked about, affirmative action, most recently on Initiative 1000. Can you say a little bit about what kind of legislative actions you'd like to see in the future that will promote education and also elevate these most vulnerable youth?
Well, I'm a big proponent of affirmative action, but for me, affirmative action has never meant hiring or selecting or admitting into college an unqualified person, but really reaching out, taking a hard look at people you might not otherwise consider, people who don't quite fit the mold, who don't have the traditional background for a particular job or maybe ready for college, or that we don't, or people who aren't really aware of the college opportunities. And letting them know about financial aid and scholarships and work opportunities to help pay for that college education. So I think that what the state needs to do, especially with respect to education and especially with respect to foster youth, is really making counselors, foster parents, the school, the educators, as well as the foster youth aware of all the different support systems and financial aid that's available if they want to go to college. And we need to let them know that all things are possible and that finances will not be a barrier. And right now, the state of Washington has just recently, a year ago, under Governor Inslee, passed legislation that really expanded financial aid, that really makes almost free education for students coming from middle class or low income families. And the city of Seattle, for instance, has a program where they call it a Promise Scholarship, where all graduates of the public high schools in Seattle are eligible for 2 years free community college education. So really there really are fewer and fewer barriers, but we need to let the students know and motivate them and excite them and say, hey, do well in school and college. The American dream of a college education is possible. It's there. It's waiting for you.
Well said and very inspirational, Governor. Just a reminder to our audience, we are taking questions for former Governor Gary Locke at this time. So Governor, we've been talking a lot about education, and I so appreciate your passion for service. On a personal note, if you think back to your graduation, because it's about that time of the year, And we know that so many are not, they're just not going to have the graduations that you have. As a son of Washington and somebody, you know, the child of immigrants and immigrant family, can you talk a little bit about what graduation meant for you and give us some ideas on how we can create a similar kind of atmosphere and experience for the grads of 2020?
Well, first of all, graduation from high school is a really important milestone. And, you know, we don't have enough kids graduating from high school, and the dropout rate in terms of, you know, eligible students certainly needs to be improved in our state. And then, of course, graduation from college is a just absolutely monumental event. It's really sad that high school seniors and college seniors, graduates, will not be able to have commencement ceremonies. And maybe the schools, when this coronavirus is over, when it's under control, they can have some sort of makeup event, or certainly a celebration, because it certainly is a great event, and it's something for families. It's not just the graduate, but the entire family, and aunts and uncles and grandparents, and then of course the foster parents and the counselors and things like that, and all the support systems and people who've been so influential in the life and the journey of a foster youth. So I'm hoping that we can do that. But in the meantime, I would just say that for foster youth in particular, graduation should be a truly proud event, because those young people have really been able to overcome so many incredible challenges, more than most kids ever will face, or people will face in a lifetime. And the fact that they have reached that pinnacle point demonstrates to them that they can do it. They should have pride in themselves for what they've been able to accomplish, what they have overcome, but also it should be a reminder to them that they have the tools, the perseverance, the guts, the tenacity, that as life presents even more challenges to them, they have that knowledge down deep. They can handle anything. They can handle anything. And so I would encourage them just to have big dreams, and know, because of their life experiences and what they've been able to go through and what they've been able to overcome, and the power within themselves, that they can do it, that those dreams can come true.
Thank you, Governor. It's so well said, so inspirational. So, excuse me, as we talked about, it is, May is Foster Care Awareness Month. It's also Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Can you share with us something that stands out in your mind when you think about your own heritage, in terms of any of your personal heroes or people who have inspired you?
Well, my luck in legislature or in politics has really been thanks to the trailblazing efforts of many people before me, whether it was the first Asian American council member, person elected to the city council of a major U.S. city, and that was here in Seattle, a person in the late 50s, early 60s by the name of Wing Luke, and unfortunately he died very tragically in a plane crash in the Cascades. Otherwise, he could have gone on to be maybe the first Asian American governor in U.S. history, or certainly on the mainland. He had an incredible future. But so many people talk about Wing Luke, and so when I was running for office, people would talk about Wing Luke and how much they admired him, and said, well, you know, because he did so well, then they were willing to take a chance on me. And so I think that when people break barriers and break the glass ceiling, they make it easier for other people to follow. And certainly I benefited from people like Wing Luke and one or two other people, Asian Americans, who served in the Washington State Legislature and even in the Seattle area or the Seattle City Council. So an Asian American running for office was not quite as novel and as uncommon at the time that I was running. And when I was governor, I really was invited to all these events around the country to receive awards as the first Asian American governor on the mainland. And we said no to virtually every single one of those, because I really felt that I could do more to help Asian Americans in terms of thinking or inspiring them to run for office and actually succeed in office if I was simply a respected, effective governor. That if I developed a good reputation, then like others before me, I could help push the glass ceiling, make it much more acceptable and common for an Asian American to run for whatever office and to win. Let me just say that growing up, it was a very tumultuous time for me. I really had a hard time accepting my own ancestral roots and culture, Chinese culture, because I had a third grade teacher, and this was in the early 50s or mid 50s. I had a third grade teacher on Beacon Hill who would ask all the kids of immigrants what they had for breakfast that morning. And if it wasn't the traditional American breakfast of ham and eggs and bacon and sausage or whatever, we had our hands slapped with a ruler. And so the kids from Japanese families, Japanese American families, Filipino American families, Chinese American families, and even some kids from Italian immigrant families, we had our hands slapped because it wasn't the traditional American breakfast. And so for many of us, we tried to reject the culture of our parents, and it created a lot of identity and cultural clashes. And I just am ashamed of the grief that I gave my parents. And it wasn't until I went to college and basically coming out of high school during the civil rights movement that I could realize that I could be both Chinese and American, that I was Chinese American. And I'm very proud of the contributions of Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, who have given their blood, sweat, and tears for the prosperity, the development, the defense, the security, the innovation, the culture of America. And we have so much to be proud of. But we cannot relax our guard. There's constant discrimination and racism and stereotyping, and we just hope that American society continues to move forward and becomes much more inclusive.
Thank you, Governor. That's beautiful words, very inspirational for these times. We do have a question from Catherine on Facebook. She asks, what kinds of things can we do to inspire more qualified parents to create a foster home for young people?
Well, first of all, I think we need to publicize the need for foster parents and the supports that the state and nonprofits will provide those potential foster parents, because it's kind of a scary thing. Oh my gosh, I'm bringing a young person into my home. And so I think we need kind of an education recruitment effort there. It's not going to be for the money. I mean, the money helps, but and we have now a lot of households with extra bedrooms or whatever, as some of the other kids have gone off to college or whatever, and so it's an opportune time. So yeah, I think it's really neat. We need organizations to really reach out to potential parents, foster parents, and let them know of the support systems, because otherwise it's just too daunting. Yeah,
I definitely think that's really good advice. I think we do have to put the word out there and then support people who are interested in fostering youth to get through that process. And perhaps as a result of our discussion today, we'll inspire more people to reach out to young people, because they are succeeding all over the place. And just like you, Governor Locke, so many of them have inspirational stories and come from non-traditional backgrounds. So it is very much a work of the heart to support children in this way. So as we're getting close to wrapping up our time, Governor, any final words of advice for us in these really interesting times that we find ourselves in?
Well, actually, going back to the recruitment of additional foster parents, it's important not just to recruit them, but to make sure that they know that there's support systems and advice that they can count on even after they become a foster parent, that it's not like, oh, you're off on your own and good luck. But actually, I'd like to hear from you what you think are some of the incredible challenges, the major challenges facing organizations like yours and others, or just foster parents and foster youth in general.
Well, thank you for asking that question, Governor. I think right now, as we talked a little bit about With schools being closed and Washingtonians on lockdown order, youth who are in, our youth are normally in trauma or in crisis, and this just kind of exacerbates it for them. So some of the challenges we're seeing are making sure that our youth have the equipment they need to attend school. So it's material things like laptops and hotspots and access to wireless. And it's also basic needs, just like everyone else in Washington is seeing. It's need for food, it's need for support and need for those caring adults who will show our young people and model the way forward for them. So when you talk about the people who inspired you and your heroes, our young people need those heroes too. And they need to see that that people who look like them and come from similar backgrounds, like you and Yesler Terrace, can succeed, can become governor, can serve at the highest levels of office. So I think the challenge for us, as with just about everyone these days, is securing our funding and making sure that we continue to serve at the same levels that we did pre-virus. And that's challenging, but we're absolutely committed to it because, again, our youth are some of the most vulnerable in the state, and they need us now more than ever. So, for us, it's funding, it's donations. We have 3,000 volunteers a year who support our store and donate goods for our youth. And there will be lots of opportunities to volunteer coming up. And if you're interested, if anyone in the audience is interested, please follow us on social media. Please know that we'll be doing these Facebook Lives every Wednesday and Friday at noon. And then next Wednesday, our next one is Wednesday, May 20th, where we'll have one of our education specialists, Stephanie Butler, in conversation with a youth that we serve, a young lady named Brianna. So thank you for asking that question, Governor. And again, thank you to everyone in the audience for participating. And it's very much appreciate, Governor, you're making time in your schedule and taking time out from continuing to serve Washington, serve our youth, and serve our communities to participate with us today. So again, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Governor. Thank you, audience, for participating with us. And we will see you on the next Facebook Live. Thank you.
To all of you, keep up the great work.
Thank you.